tabloid war. Week after week, a hot, frenzied catfight for exclusives on the lives, loves and private demons of the celebrated.
We feed voraciously on these people.
I mean, Rachel, when I was at the Weekly, I used to call her the patron saint of circulation.
It's really difficult to understand how people can possibly think we're a fusty, mumsy sort of publication.
Back pages. But the glamour belies the grit. Underneath, there's a battle raging for readers that's both dirtier and grittier than ever before. For decades, there was just the Woman's Weekly, a trusted institution. Then 4 years ago, the Australian Woman's Day started publishing a New Zealand edition. And now, the Australian New Idea's doing the same. Even Australia has only 2 women's weeklies, but inspired by us, they're about to launch a third there as well. Week after relentless week, the 3 magazines battle it out for stories on the big names. Their faces go on the cover, and it's the cover that gets the sales. Woman's Weekly editor Jenny Lynch.
Honestly, when one of our competitors came on the scene, they threatened to sink us within 6 months. Well, we're still alive and kicking, and very much so, and still on top.
Across town, Wendyl Nissen, Jenny's foe at the Woman's Day.
Every time you go for a story, you have 2 other magazines breathing down your neck.
When the Woman's Day came into New Zealand, there was no star system. To get an edge over the weekly, it needed local celebrities to feature on its pages. So it helped create them. Then it started tying them up to exclusive contracts.
If I tie up a story, I'll bloody tie it up. I mean, I work in a city where there's 1 major daily newspaper. Does any Herald journalist know what competition is? I work in a city where there's 2 television news channels. That's not 3, that's 2. I'm in an industry where there's 3 of us. And if I'm aggressive and I tie stories up, well, I'll bloody do it because I have to.
Engagements, weddings, pregnancies, babies. Nowadays, if it's happening to a celeb, it's often tied to an exclusive contract with a weekly women's magazine. But frustrated rivals have been known to resort to telescopic lenses, rooftop photographers, even snapshots from moving cars to get the happy couple.
Diane, what's the latest today?
Homes presenter Susan Wood knows just how dirty the tactics can get when rivals try to muscle in on an exclusive contract. Paul Holmes had signed with Woman's Day for his wedding at the Regent Hotel. The Woman's Weekly then approached Susan Wood on the side.
She said, look, we want to get some photos of Paul's wedding and we're prepared to pay. It was a large sum of money, and I seem to remember it was around $5,000 for photos. We can provide you with this little camera that no one will notice if you'll take photos of the wedding for us. And my reaction was actually to burst out laughing.
I thought that was quite smart. And she turned it down. But at the time, that was the big story, and that was the one I wanted. And she turned us down, but it was worth a punt.
Melanie Jones was poached from the Woman's Weekly. She's now the editor of New Idea. It was she who made the offer to Susan Wood through an intermediary. But the Day's Wendyl Nissen's not impressed.
What do you think of that?
I would never do that. I think that is desperate. And I never want to be seen as being particularly desperate in the marketplace.
But as sportscaster Kathy Campbell can testify, desperate measures are the order of the day. When news of her pregnancy leaked to the Woman's Day, they wouldn't take no for an answer.
Lo and behold, about 3 weeks later, I'm walking down the street in Dunedin, and there was the billboard, Kathy's baby secret. I couldn't believe it. Not only was it a story that had no interview with me, it was based on numerous stories that I'd done with the magazine over a 3-year period beforehand.
When the magazine started running low on local celebrities, they turned to the sports field. The younger, sexier players are now all fair game for exclusives.
It's unbelievable, really, because, I mean, when I first started here, you didn't even give women's magazines a second thought. But now, you consciously have to think about them in certain sporting circumstances.
One Network News sports editor Richard Becht finds he has to haggle when sports stars are tied to magazine exclusives, like Matthew Ridge or Barbara Kendall.
We said, look, to the magazine, we want to do it. They said, you can have shots of the wedding, but you can only have 10 seconds or something like that, which is very, very brief, as we all know.
That's all they've ever asked for. How much more do they want? It's a wedding. I mean, what do they want to do, a documentary on a wedding?
And because celebrities often can't guarantee an exclusive of their wedding, the price magazines are willing to pay for contracts is falling.
I'll pay a set amount for the engagement, but with the wedding I'll say, okay, this is my top, but if you hold this wedding in a place where everyone can come and my rivals can come and I'm paying you for an exclusive that you cannot guarantee me, then the price will come down.
When it comes to getting stories on the celebrities' lives or their new projects, almost all's fair in love and war.
You know, we're not skulking around, we're not going through people's rubbish bins, we're not bugging their phone conversations, we're not, and we all know an awful lot more than we print about a lot of the celebrities in New Zealand.
I think that hounding people into the ground is one of the uglier aspects of very competitive journalism, and that's, you know, we will just never be prepared to go to that stage.
But the magazines chase ordinary mortals as well, like baby snatch victim Lisa Collins. The Woman's Day paid around $8,000 for this exclusive. But New Idea ran what's called a spoiler, which it also dubbed an exclusive.
Yes, we did.
Is that something you're proud of?
I thought it was, at the time, proud. At the time, I thought that it was a justifiable way to get the story, yes.
But Lisa Collins had gone to New Idea to negotiate a price. To her shock, parts of the conversation were printed.
Is that fair play? I mean, you essentially taped the conversation without her realising it.
No, that's not true.
Is that not true?
No.
How then did you accurately get direct quotes off her without her realising it?
We were in and out of the room.
And so Melanie Jones got her story, proving paying for exclusives doesn't always shut out the enemy. All three editors say they're reluctant payers, but the grinding competition between them ends up in bidding wars for stories.
I would say about 20% of the stories we run involve money changing hands, and not a lot of money either.
How much is a baby wedding cover story worth?
It very much depends on the personality involved.
What's a broad range of figures?
Ballpark, between about 2.5 and, I don't know, I probably wouldn't go as high as 10. It would have to be a pretty special baby, like the Pope.
Well, I think that's one of the saddest things that's happened to New Zealand journalism in some time, really. I think that it encourages greed. It's quite astonishing the people who will come to us now and say, okay, how much are you going to pay me for this story? They'll be quite upfront about it, and often, you know, non-enmities, really.
There are lots of people in just general walks of life, and there does seem to be a feeling abroad in the community that the Women's Weekly magazines have replaced the ACC lump sum payment for people who've suffered a tragedy of some description.
But is what's good for the goose also good for the gander?
If someone rang me up when my baby died and said, we'll give you $5,000 to do the story, I'd say, excuse me, get off the phone. You know, there is no price, there is no way. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that is exactly why no story to me has a monetary value until they bring it up.
Where is this checkbook journalism going to stop?
It's funny, isn't it? A lot of people say to me, why don't the three of you just get together and decide that none of you will pay? And the reason is, I wouldn't trust them. And I don't think that they would trust me either.
Landing the story, though, is not enough. Potential readers have to get hooked onto it, and that's the job of the cover lines. But are the cover lines a beat-up oversell? Take Brave Susan's hostage terror. She might have been called out to talk to the Morrinsville hostage taker, but wasn't.
I was embarrassed by that headline because I had nothing to do with that. When I was interviewed about it, they kind of asked me about it, and I threw it away, which is how I feel about it. But, I mean, I guess it was a headline. I guess it sold a few magazines. I don't know.
I'm not advertising butter and delivering margarine. I mean, I am delivering Susan Wood. I delivered a story that admittedly had a lot to do with her new baby, but also I don't think anyone knew that Susan had been approached to do that hostage drama.
And what about Louise Pagonis's birth secret? She had an epidural.
I would say it's exaggerated, but not exactly, but not distorted. Let's put it that way.
Get her higher?
Get her a little bit higher.
Fine.
For the Wilson and Horton-owned Woman's Weekly, it's a question of win some, lose some. But overall, it's winning the war for readers, over 1 million. And with the readers, the most advertising sales. A few years ago, the Weekly was turning in losses. Now it's in profit. Ironically, the Kerry Packer-owned Woman's Day sells more copies than the Weekly. It's too soon to tell how the New Zealand edition of Rupert Murdoch's new idea is going. It's only been out a few months. But despite being on top, the Woman's Weekly admits it has an image problem. They say when you're hot, you're on the cover of the Woman's Day. When you're not, you're on the inside of the Woman's Weekly. But now the Weekly's going on the offensive. It's jazzing up its look, determined to win back fans from its Aussie rivals. Part of its Look at Us Now, the New Look Weekly campaign will be more fashion and more gloss.
We're out to grab people and to say, look, we're here, and forget about all those silly things you've heard about us for the last 10 years.
The Weekly's changed all right. Even Kerre Woodham was shocked to find herself quoted word for raunchy word in a recent story.
Normally, the Darling Women's Weekly sanitise you. You know, they... You can say to them, I've been bonking a Venezuelan rugby team, which again, I haven't, but if you said that to them, they would, in the past, say Kerry had a healthy interest in sport and overseas travel.
It was the first time that we'd ever had a complaint from someone for quoting them absolutely accurately. We were taken aback too. We were absolutely astonished.
But then, this is war, and in the war of the women's weeklies, there are no gentlemen's agreements. The rules are still being worked out.